I'm Veylora, and my world was a steady weave of linens and trust until Daniel tore it apart. Imagine me pinning fabric in my Portland shop, Woven Haven, when my phone buzzes with his cold text. It's over. San Diego with Lily. Took the cash. Bye. My heart jolted, yet I smiled, for I'd seen his deceit coming. Months earlier, I stashed my earnings, hired a lawyer, and spun a web he never suspected. He swaggered off with a 20-year-old, clueless about the house in my name and the hollow account he thought he'd claimed. Now he's floundering in San Diego, slapped with papers, ditched by Lily, and reeling from an embezzlement suit I unknowingly triggered. I sip coffee, free at last, with a tale to quicken your pulse. Betrayal, cunning, and a twist that'll catch you off guard. Step into my story. I stand behind Woven Haven's counter, folding muslin as cedar drifts up from the oak floor of my Portland shop on this damp morning. At 35, I've shaped this refuge, its shelves of silks and cottons snaring faint light through a fogged window, every thread proof of a dream I nursed into being. 10 years ago, Daniel filled this space too, his broad shoulders straining as he hauled bolts of fabric, his rough laugh a pulse in the air while I smoothed them into order. I saw him as my rock then, the one who'd steady me while I built this haven. Now I pause, a spool in hand, and catch a whiff of cologne, sharp and alien, clinging to his scarf by the door. I'd left it there since yesterday, too caught in my routine to toss it, but that scent, sniffed when I brushed it aside, digs at me, a barb I can't shake. The gray sky sags outside, pressing the glass, and a chill snakes up my spine, quick and cold. He's been a wisp lately, his late nights piling up with curt grunts. Meetings, drinks, nothing I can't patch, I tell myself. I hum softly, the sound frail in the shop's hush, and stack the muslin with care. Once I thought we were a knot that held, he and I, his presence as sure as the beams above. A floorboard creaks, pulling my eyes to that scarf, its fringe twitching faintly, and I nudge it, only to see a crumpled note slip free. Smudged ink, a bar's name I don't know. My breath snags, tight and shallow, and I mutter it's nothing, shoving it into my pocket, yet my fingers quiver as I pin the fabric down. This shop is my marrow, forged with sweat and stubborn hope, and Daniel's place in it runs deep, a groove I've never questioned. I force my gaze back to the counter, the cloth crisp under my palms, and let pride brace my hands. The bell stays mute, the morning thick with wet air, and as I reach for another spool, a whisper coils in my chest, low and relentless, tugging at my peace. I shake it off, grip the thread firm, and swear this is enough, this world I've claimed. His silences, his clipped words, they're just loose ends I can mend. But that scarf dangles still, the note a stone against my thigh, and something unravels in me, a seam I'm not ready to rip open. Last night's text flickers in my mind. Late again, curt as ever, and I wonder when his voice stopped feeling like home. I rise to the patter of rain on Woven Haven's shingles, my Portland shop creaking awake as I turn the key and nudge the sign to open. At 35, this is my tide, a current of snipping scissors, rustling paper, and murmured greetings from customers who drift through the door. The air hums with damp wool and the faint buzz of the radiator today, so I weave through it, stacking linen bolts, their heft grounding me as I slot them onto shelves. Each day echoes the one before, a heartbeat I can trace blind, but Daniel's absence carves a deeper hollow now. I once heard his growl over the kettle here, steam curling as we mapped out shipments, his scrawl marking the margins of my ledger. But lately, he's a phantom, his texts blunt. Out late, don't wait. I punch a sale into the register, keys cool under my fingertips, and tell myself it's just strain, a snag I can overlook. Yet the stillness bites, a cold edge beneath the shop's hum, and I find my gaze flicking to the phone, chasing a chime that won't sound. The rain swells, pelting the glass, so I grab the broom, its scrape a rhythm to drown the unease twisting inside me. His chuckles used to stitch these moments tight, but now his silences drape heavy, thick as the sodden jackets customers peel off. I knot a thread, needle glinting under the bulb, and picture his mock sigh at my precision, a memory fading fast. His excuses stack high, bar tabs he shrugs off, names that slip past me, and I whisper, it's a phase, forcing a grin for a buyer clutching velvet. The hours churn, taut yet familiar, and I rest against the counter, thumb grazing its worn lip, feeling his void press close. A delivery thuds in, burlap sacks I sign for with a nod, their coarse weave steadying me, but my sleeve snags the pocket where that note hides, ink smudged from yesterday's find. I'd shoved it deep, too rushed to face it, and now it gnaws, a bar's name I can't place, my pulse jolting, swift and uneven. This shop is my keel, its frame a bulwark I've forged, so I swear Daniel's drift is a squall I can weather. I tag a price, the clip crisp in the damp, and nod to the next soul stepping in. His late nights, his gruff dodges. They're tangles I can tease apart, I vow, but the rain's ceaseless drum feeds a doubt I can't hush, a ripple swelling beneath my steady hands. I'm hunched over a ledger in woven haven, pen scratching totals under the brass lamp's unsteady glow, when my phone buzzes sharp against the counter, its screen flaring in the late Portland gloom. A customer's boots leave a whiff of wet leather as she slips out, coins jingling from her quick sale, and I peer down, Daniel's text cutting deep. It's over, San Diego with Lily. Took the cash. Bye. My lungs seize, a knot strangling the breath, but a flicker of calm washes in, cool and thin as the drizzle streaking the window. I drop the pen, its nib glinting, and trace the words. Each one a splinter I should bleed for, yet I've sensed this gale looming, a shadow I've steeled against. Tires rasp outside. Then the door bangs open, Daniel storming in, suitcase thudding down. His sneer a jagged edge as he leans close. Lily's 20, electric, he snarls, voice thick with spite. Not a washed-up shell like you. My heart slams, a drum in my skull. But I stand, slow and firm, and push a glass of water his way, my grip solid as the oak beneath us. His eyes flash, wild and cruel, as he spits tales of sunlit escape, every jab a hook he thinks will gut me. I tilt my head, silent, and watch him strut, blind to the note still waiting my pocket, its ink a quiet scar from yesterday's find. The air sours with his cologne, a heavy musk that claws at my throat, so I swallow hard, tasting ash where love once sat. Once I'd have shattered, pleaded for him, but now I root firm, the shop's hum steadying me, a backbone forged in silence. He snatches his bag, barking a laugh. Rot with your scraps! And I let him stride out, the bells clang a clean break. My fingers graze the phone, steady as I type. Safe journey, and send it off, breath slipping free, slow and light. The drizzle hushes beyond the pane, the lamp's pool warming my hands, and this shop, my stronghold, stands unbowed, its frame a shield he can't pierce. His words ring empty, a gust against stone, and I lift the pen again, its ink flowing sure, a line to mark this end. His shape fades in my head, a smear I'll wipe away, and as the door stills, a fire kindles in me, bright and fierce, a vow I'm ready to claim. I hover by Woven Haven's counter, the brass lamp casting a warm halo as I twist the lock after Daniel's suitcase thuds out of my Portland shop, his parting sneer still ringing. The drizzle outside has stilled, a glossy film coating the window, so I ease onto the stool, my phone cooling from that safe journey send-off. His text, his venom, they should have crushed me, but a quiet surge ripples through me, a current I've stoked for months. I tug open a locked drawer, its key hidden beneath the register, and draw out a slim folder. Its corners frayed from nights I pored over it in shadow. Last spring, I'd heard a woman's giggle spill from his call, his fumble when I pressed who, and that sparked it. A fuse I lit in silence. I opened a secret account, siphoned every cent this shop earned, my breath shallow as I tapped transfers under lamplight at home. Receipts stacked in a locked tin, bar tabs and toll slips I snagged from his coat. A web I spun with a whisper of ink, and I met a lawyer, her nod firm over tea, as we plotted his fall. That joint account he bragged of looting, I'd gutted it first, leaving a shell of coins he grabbed in his haste. Blind to the house, my mother's bequest, locked in my name alone. The note in my pocket, that bar's smudged mark. It's a thread in the snare I've woven, evidence piled from restless dawns. I close the folder, its heft a bulwark in my hands, and the shop's hush enfolds me. A whiff of wax from a stubby candle cutting the air. His jabs from an hour back, washed up shell. They crumble, dust in a tide I've turned. So I stand, boots tapping the floor, a cadence that anchors me. I'd clocked his slide long ago, his cologne on a scarf, his mutters over drinks, and I raised this dam, stone by unseen stone, while he pranced oblivious. The lamp's gleam skips on the glass, mirroring a blaze in my core, hot as the resolve I've tempered. I call my lawyer, her number a pulse in my memory, and she picks up, voice like steel. It's time, my tone stays even, clear as I say he's left. The paper's primed, a noose he'll never slip. This shop, my citadel, thrums with a power he can't dent. Its shelves my legacy alone. I hang up, the click a lock snapping shut, and press my hands to the counter, its grain a steady bite. Daniel's a fool, chasing a mirage he'll never grasp. And I rise straighter, the candles hiss a chant to my hidden fight. I've knit this trap, taut and unseen, and as night pools beyond the glass, I feel it tighten, ready to drag him down. I perch at Woven Haven's back desk, a sewing machine's whir stitching the Portland dusk as I cradle coffee, its dark bite steaming against my lips. Daniel's fled, his jeers a dying rasp, and I see him now, slumped under San Diego's scorch, that suitcase flung open on a motel's stained rug. I picture it sharp, a courier's tap rousing him days after my lawyer's call, papers thudding down, divorce writs filed last week, a theft suit, a lien on his truck, each line a barb I've honed. His grin, I'd bet, twists to ash, eyes wild as Lily weighs his fall, her boots snapping pavement when she pockets half his cash, abandoning him by a diner's buzzing sign. Here, I stir the mug, heat seeping into my palms, and watch twilight gild the shop's walls, a piece I've seized. That call 2 days back lit this fire, papers sent ahead to strike, so I stand, boots grazing a spool that rolls free, and yank Daniel's tackle box from a dusty nook, stashed there since a summer he forgot. Its hinges groan, lures glinting dull, and I pass it to a mover, his van rumbling out back. Charity's gain, take it! My thumb brushes its dented rim, a ghost of lake days gone. Then I pivot. The machines drone a chant as I log the day's haul. In San Diego, I'd wager his phone pings, my name a specter he can't curse, his strut crushed by the snare I've sprung. Lily's bolted, her smirk a lash he didn't duck, and I grin, quick and keen, knowing that account he pillaged was a husk, my gambit sealed long ago. The shop's air snaps with die's bite from a new bolt, shelves rising proud by my craft alone, and a charge winds tight in me, a spring coiled to snap. I'd caught her echo in his lies, that springtime laugh, so I shaped this vengeance, shard by careful shard, while he chased a phantom glow. The mover waves, carting off his last trace, and I bolt the back door, its clang a vow carved deep. His truck, his loot, his ego. They're fraying, chords I've sliced, and I settle at the desk, pen gliding over the ledger. Each tally a stake in my soil, the window traps a sky-bleeding violet, lamps sparking alive outside, and I sip again, the coffee's sting a twin to the blow I've landed. This shop stands tall, my forge of triumph, its whir a rhythm he can't break. Daniel's a moat now, thrashing in a light he'll never clutch, and I lean back, the chairs creak a soft echo, a joy unfurling bold, a yield I've plucked from his folly. I rest against Woven Haven's front counter, a needle's steady tap threading the Portland night as I watch headlights pierce the fog beyond the glass, their glow fracturing in the haze. 2 days since Daniel's fall kicked off, and now my phone jolts, his number blinking, a frayed lifeline from San Diego's blur, crackling like he's borrowed a stranger's cell. I pick up, his voice a raw snarl. "Drop it, Veylora! You're empty!" My chuckle spills out, crisp and icy, and I reel off his losses. Each syllable a spike. Legal fees stacking high. The house he can't touch. My mother's title he never guessed. And a fresh wound. His ex-partner's suit for funds he skimmed, sparked by my receipts last month when I tipped the law. His gasp stutters through, a growl collapsing, so I cut the line, the hush a whip I crack. The shop's air snaps with starch from ironed linen, a shutter rattling soft in the draft, and I feel a wave swell, a flood I've called forth. I see him there, hunched on a curb, sun searing his skin. Those papers a yoke he can't shed. Lily's laugh a lost sting, his truck hauled off, his cash a memory. Here, I pace to the window, my shape stark in the reflection, a woman recast by this clash, her lines tempered hard. His call was a flail he'd deny, a seam I've torn wide, and I relish it, mouth tugging sharp, knowing the account he plundered was my lure. The house my bastion, the embezzlement a boon I didn't seek. The night clots, fog pressing the pane, and I turn, boots thumping the boards, a march of my might. I'd traced his deceit months ago, that spring giggle, those bar stubs, so I spun this collapse, strand by relentless strand, while he pranced in the dark. A clock chimes above, its beat a cadence to my win, and I ease a silk bolt onto the shelf, its gloss a match to the blaze in my blood. He's finished, a shell I've shattered, and I perch on the stool, the needles hum a melody as I tie off the final knot. His truck, his pride, his plots. They're embers, ashes I've brushed aside, and I draw a breath, the starches bite, a pledge locked firm. The headlights dim, swallowed by mist, and this shop rises proud, my seat of cunning and steel. Daniel's a shade now, scorched by a dawn he craved, and I fold my hands on the counter, its grain a solid thrum, a rapture flaring bold, a prize I've claimed from his crash. I'd framed this snare, a mesh of iron and guile, and as the fog seals the glass, I know he's drowned, a husk I've cast to fade. I pause at Woven Haven's doorstep, a spring gust swirling through as I nail a new sign aloft, its carved words gleaming. Woven Haven, stitched anew. Months have unfurled since Daniel's collapse, his name a wisp I've let fade. And now Portland pulses with life, cherry blossoms scattering pink flecks across the threshold. At 36, I've cast off his echo, my hands deft as I thread chiffon, its sigh a melody on the shop's sun-warmed floor. James, a woodworker I met sanding a shelf last fall, drifts in often, his wry smile a spark, our chuckles mingling over tea in the back room's glow. I lift the cup now, its heat seeping into my fingers, and watch a customer browse, her hum a gentle wave against the loom's brisk clack. Daniel's a dim mark, his San Diego flop a tale I've outrun, his pleas hushed, his trace scorched by a dawn he couldn't seize. I'd felled him, my snare a craft of will and nerve, and from that ruin, I've risen, a vigor I didn't know I'd planted. The shop flourishes, its racks vivid with cloth I've dyed in sunrise tones, a spectrum shaped by my grip alone. And I halt, needle flashing, its point a star in the light. James nudges close, his pine scent a balm, not a burr. And I grin, light and sure, knowing betrayal pierced once, but I've bound it with my own weave. I'd sensed his deceit, that spring whisper, and forged this haven, unshaken by his tumble. A woman enters, her gaze warm, so I offer a strip of silk, her nod a ripple in the stillness. I've shared too, sent bolts to a shelter last week, my scars spun into grace, a gift from palms that raised this refuge. The gust dances, blossoms twirling beyond the pain, And this shop glows fierce, my canvas of grit. Its pulse a promise I've held. Daniel's a breath lost to sand, a drifter who chased a shine he couldn't clasp. And I stepped to the counter, its wood a firm pulse, a calm blooming vast, a root I've grown from his wreck. The loom hums on, a cadence of my days, and I tie the thread, its tug a quiet thrum, a truth I've etched. Deceit scars, but I've healed me, a fabric tougher than he'd ever fathom. Months later, I soar, this shop my flame, its sign a crest of my climb. And as the sun sinks, bathing the floor in gold, I know I'm Veylora, whole, a tale rewoven for those who'd listen. I've carved this truth in woven haven. Betrayal stings, but I turned Daniel's greed into my strength, weaving a life tougher than he'd ever guess. His collapse lit my path, a storm I had outlasted with guile and grit, proving we mend our own rips with threads of resolve. What about you, listener? How have you spun betrayal into a win, threading your scars into something bold? Tell me below. I'm eager to hear how you've rewoven your tale under your own sign of triumph. I'll read every stitch. For now, this is Veylora, stepping back from Portland's blossom-strewn light, vowing to cross paths again where life's loom spins anew. Share your victories, and let's weave a tapestry of resilience together. Until we meet once more, stay fierce, keep crafting,